US Army Recon platoon designs were probably at their most diverse in the middle of Iraq and Afghanistan. The Cavalry had something like 5 platoon designs in the late 2000s, while the infantry had their own share of battalion infantry scouts, dismounted recon troops, and long-range surveillance units. And then you had nuclear, biological, and chemical recon platoons that supported brigades. And that's not touching on special forces, because a lot of that stuff is what's called CUI, otherwise known as War Thunder Forum level clearance. Today, you'll learn the conventional recon platoon designs from the modular force era, roughly 2005 to the early 2010s. To make this slightly easier to follow, I've put echelon of support modifiers on the platoon symbols. So if there's an X on the symbol, it's supporting a brigade. 2 lines, a battalion. First, the Heavy Brigade Combat Teams, now called Armored BCTs. Both brigade and battalion level scout platoons had the same design and were manned by 19 series Cav scouts, whereas other maneuver battalions had 11 series infantry scouts. In terms of vehicles, they had 5 Humvees, 2 with the Mark 19 automatic grenade launchers, and 3 with 50 cals. And 3 M3A3 Bradleys, the Cav variant that could accommodate 2 dismount scouts but had more ammo and other equipment. These were administratively split into a headquarters and 3 scout sections. It was basically a hunter-killer concept, with the Humvees conducting a target handover to their Bradley wingman. Each Bradley carried a section leader acting as Bradley commander, gunner, driver, and 2 dismounted scouts. In the scout sections, each Humvee had a squad leader, driver, and scout. Doctrinally, only 1 person per Humvee was a dismount. Less dismounts than a Bradley, in addition to less combat power, mobility, and protection. This limited the platoon's ability to conduct offensive reconnaissance and security tasks. But the Humvees did have the LRAS-3, an integrated sensor suite that provided target detection under thermals out to 20 kilometers and target geolocation capability. The Humvees provided a quieter, stealthier recon capability that could be placed further forward than the Bradley. The platoon HQ Humvees carried the platoon leader and platoon sergeant, and each a driver and team leader. There were enough javelins for each Bradley, and enough M240 Bravos for every vehicle. This was a much higher density of medium MGs than in an infantry platoon. In theory, the platoon could be task organized as 4 sections, 2 vehicles each, or 3 sections, which would have 2 sections of 1 Bradley and 2 Humvees, plus an HQ with a Bradley and Humvee. To simplify things, a platoon acting as more but smaller sections or even individual vehicles means more avenues of approach can be covered and a screen can be deeper. It also theoretically reduces the noise and visual signature of each section, increasing stealth. However, it also makes it difficult for the platoon to gain fire superiority and maintain command and control. A platoon operating as individual vehicles when dispersion is the number one thing should only be done if the threat is minimal. Security missions that involve delaying or repelling the enemy are generally not possible in that configuration. Fewer but larger sections means more combat power for protecting their brigade or battalion. The platoon is easier to control, there are more dismounts in the same place to conduct real missions like manning OPs and conducting patrols, and it may be more practical if the platoon is under strength. But fewer subunits means fewer reconnaissance objectives can be observed, and the screen is narrower and shallower. The situational nature of recon and security missions is why the internal task organization is important. Each of the brigade's 2 combined arms battalions had 1 of these platoons. Brigade-level recon squadrons had 3 troops, each with 2 platoons, so 6 platoons supporting each brigade. Taking a detour from maneuver brigades, the 3rd Armored Cavalry Regiment had its own heavy scout platoon structure. This regiment theoretically provided recon and security to an armor-heavy corps during a conventional war. While the heavy BCT had a 3x5x30 design, the ACR had a 6x30, 6 Bradleys, and 30 scouts. They were administratively organized as an HQ section and Alpha and Bravo sections, each with 2 Bradleys. While the heavy brigade scout platoons were normally 4 or 3 sections, the ACRs were normally 3 or 2. A 3-section setup would theoretically be a Charlie section with the PL and platoon sergeant, and an Alpha and Bravo section. Although a more practical task org would have probably been the senior scout section leader in charge of Alpha and the platoon sergeant taking Bravo. A 2-section setup would be a platoon leader or platoon sergeant leading each section. More rarely, the platoon could be employed as 6 vehicles, which is the hardest to control and has the least concentration of force, but would provide the most information gathering nodes. In terms of personnel, in each 2-vehicle section, the lead Bradley had a section leader, gunner, driver, and 2 scouts. The wingman Bradleys had a squad leader in lieu of a section leader, and the HQ Bradleys had the PL or platoon sergeant. There were 3 javelins per platoon, and enough M240 Bravos for every vehicle for defensive use. This provided enough dismounts to create 6 2-man teams, 3 4-man squads, or 2 6-man squads depending on the task org. In the heavy BCT variant by comparison, a platoon organized as 4 sections could generate 2 dismounts in the HQ to provide local security and 4 dismounted scouts in each of the 3 recon sections. Although this left the Bradley with a 2-man crew, so 3 dismounts may have been more practical while maintaining concurrent mounted operations. A 3-section task org, though, could provide 2 teams of 5 dismounts and 1 team of 4 dismounts for conducting longer missions. The ACR broadly had 3 armored cav squadrons, each with 3 troops, which in turn had 2 scout platoons and 2 tank platoons, so 18 scout platoons in the regiment. Also at echelons above Brigade were Battlefield Surveillance Brigades, a short-lived organization that combined 2 military intelligence battalions and a recon and surveillance squadron. Its reconnaissance assets were geared towards stealthy surveillance methods and not especially well suited to combat-centric reconnaissance and security tasks. And the military intelligence battalions were mainly for signal and human intelligence collection and drone surveillance, almost the exact opposite of an ACR. It had a recon and surveillance squadron with 2 company-sized troops, each with 2 scout platoons among other subunits. Platoons had 6 Humvees, each carrying 3 personnel. Per section, a section leader, javelin gunner, and driver, and then a team leader, scout, and driver. In the HQ section, replace the section and team leaders with the PL and platoon sergeant. Each section had 1 Mark 19 and 1 50 cal mounted, with the javelin gunners and the 50 cal Humvees by TO&E and enough M240 Bravos in the troop to give each platoon 3 or 4. These platoons were optimized to act as 2 or 3 sections, or 6 vehicles, basically the same as an ACR. 2 sections allowed for a mix of mounted and dismounted reconnaissance. Each section could have 3 dismounts while simultaneously operating the Humvees, since each Humvee needed a driver and weapon system and sensor operator. Or it could have 5 dismounts to man OPs or conduct foot patrols, although this left the Humvees with a skeleton crew. If they needed to conduct a completely dismounted operation, each section could provide 9 scouts. 3 sections only allowed for each section to generate 2 dismounts for local security or short-duration OPs while maintaining use of the Humvees. Also in the Battlefield Surveillance Brigade was a long-range surveillance company, which was completely different from the Cav units. If any unit in this video was Special Forces adjacent, it was the LURSs. The successors to the Vietnam-era LURSs were infantry designed to conduct stealthy reconnaissance and surveillance missions behind enemy lines. They were capable of various types of air, land, and sea infiltration, or stay-behind operations. If properly resourced, they could conduct some recon tasks similar to a motorized scout platoon, emplace and recover sensors, conduct Pathfinder operations, recover personnel, or conduct seaborne surveillance. However, they were not capable of security or escort missions due to their limited weaponry. LRS companies had 3 detachments, each with an HQ with a detachment leader and detachment sergeant, and 5 teams. Ideally, the detachment leader would be Ranger qualified, a graduate of one of the surveillance courses, military freefall qualified, Pathfinder qualified, and have platoon leader and staff experience. Although their TO&E rank was lieutenant, Lur's doctrine acknowledged that captain was more realistic. Each team was authorized the 1152 version of the Humvee with the pickup style bed for carrying personnel and gear, and there was a lot of potential gear if they were doing a mounted mission. This version of the Humvee could be internally loaded in a Chinook, sling-loaded, or airdropped. But the Humvee also had a bigger signature and left distinctive tracks, so there had to be very careful route planning and camouflaging. The detachment HQ was authorized a more conventional 1165 Humvee. Except for the one team that was led by the detachment sergeant, each team had a team leader, assistant team leader, 3 scouts, and a radio operator. Unless the teams required some sort of support, teams would avoid contacting each other on mission and plan independently of each other to avoid compromise if one team was captured. There were no javelins in their TO&E, but they had M240s, M249s, and disposable anti-tank weapons. 2 sniper teams were also organic at the company level. But this is a lost capability in the conventional army as the last LURS units were shut down in 2018. Moving on, Infantry Brigade combat teams had 3 designs for the brigade and battalion levels. The brigade was supported by a Recon squadron with a mix of motorized Cav scouts and dismounted infantry scouts. The motorized platoon was similar in many respects to the Surveillance Brigade scout platoon, but 2 of the sections got a tow Humvee to provide anti-armor fire. They'd be paired with the Humvee mounting a 50 cal, while the platoon HQ Humvees had Mark 19s. So that'd be 2 tows, 2 50 cals, and 2 Mark 19s per platoon, plus 3 javelin gunners and 3 or 4 M240 Bravos. Light infantry battalions though had a different motorized scout platoon design. Theirs were manned by infantrymen and organized into an HQ and 3 squads. The HQ included 2 Humvees, 1 each for the platoon leader and platoon sergeant, each driven by a scout, one of which was the PL's radio operator. Each squad also had 2 Humvees with the squad leader, team leader, and 4 scouts. Without augmentation, these platoons were most suited for dismounted, stealthy reconnaissance and very limited security missions with no direct engagement of the enemy. Their TO&E had unarmed Humvees without the LRAS-3, so they had the least mounted capabilities of the motorized platoons. I don't have the exact distribution of dismounted weapons, but the HHC did have 6 javelins and a handful of M240 Bravos. In addition to motorized scouts, the infantry brigades also had a dismounted recon troop in their recon squadrons manned by infantrymen. They were optimized for stealthy reconnaissance in complex terrain. Each troop had 2 scout platoons with an HQ and 3 scout teams. Each team had a leader, assistant team leader, 2 radio operators, and 4 scouts. Armament was task organized, but there were enough javelins in the troop to give each team 1 and enough M249 saws to give them 2, but no M240s, at least not by TO&E. Compared to the motorized platoon operating without its Humvees, the dismounted platoon offered 10 additional personnel, which provided more options for conducting simultaneous patrols while also manning dismounted OPs. But they had limited firepower to protect their brigade. No tows, 50 cals, or Merc 19s. Onto the newest type of maneuver brigades, the Stryker Brigades. In the brigade-level Recon squadron, Recon platoons included 4 Stryker reconnaissance vehicles, basically a Stryker with an LRAS-3 and human intelligence equipment. The Strykers were kind of unique among the scout platoons in that they, in theory, were meant to have organic human intelligence personnel. A lot of getting out to talk to civilians and detainees while patrolling through populated areas. The wingman Strykers included a section leader, gunner, driver, humant collector, and scout. The platoon sergeant's vehicle had a gunner, driver, team leader, and humant collector, while the platoon leader's vehicle had a gunner, driver, team leader, scout, and humant NCO. Each vehicle also carried an M240 Bravo and Javelin for use by the dismounts. Because the platoon only had 4 vehicles, it was only capable of a 2-section organization with 2 Strykers each, or dispersed operations with 4 vehicles. 3 of the vehicles were capable of generating a 3-man dismount team, while the platoon leader's vehicle could do 4, assuming the platoon leader was leading a patrol. They could accommodate 7 additional passengers across the platoon for augmentees like interpreters and interrogators. Stryker Infantry Battalion Recon platoons were similar, but manned by infantrymen. It had 4 Strykers in a separate mounted element, with a platoon leader, platoon sergeant, and 2 Stryker commanders in charge of 4 drivers. There were 3 separate scout teams with a team leader, assistant team leader, and 3 scouts, so 15 dedicated dismounts, and none of them were intelligence personnel. Task organization with the battalion sniper squad was also an option for infantry battalion scout platoons. The same sniper squad was also in light infantry and combined arms battalion HHCs as a possible augmentation. To round it out, a less covered force, the nuclear, biological, and chemical recon platoons, nowadays called CBRN with the addition of radiological to the acronym. Their job was to provide the brigade early warning of weapons of mass destruction. They're able to detect, identify, and locate CBRN hazards more accurately and quickly than standard recon units, so they can augment other scouts if that's expected. Initially, these were part of special troops battalions and heavy and infantry BCTs, and a surveillance troop under the Recon squadron of Stryker Brigades. They're now uniformly in brigade engineer battalions. They're early designed for heavy BCTs before the phase-in of the Stryker called for 2 M93A1 Fox NBC Recon vehicles, based on the German Fuchs. Each carried the PL and platoon sergeant, with an additional 2 chemical NCOs and 2 chemical specialists, a small platoon. After the phase-in of the Stryker, the platoon had 2 NBC Recon Strykers. In terms of personnel, each Stryker had 1 less chemical ops NCO than with the old Fox design. These were all 74 series MOSs. The infantry BCT's platoon was basically the same, but mounted on 2 Humvees. Stryker Brigades were a little bit different though. Their platoon had 3 NBC Recon Strykers as opposed to 2, with 4 soldiers per vehicle. The 3rd vehicle had an additional team leader in place of the PL and platoon sergeant. Thanks to my patrons and channel members who keep this content free and sustainable. Join them to keep Battle Order around. I'll see you over there.